there. Welcome to Marriage Unmasked. Today we are talking about the topic, do opposites really attract? Does that really happen, especially in your marriage? Maybe you can relate to us. We're very different people, and yet we were attracted to each other. I came in very quiet, a little bit reserved, and not very adventurous. And Cara is a very free spirit, very adventurous, like wanting to do a lot of exciting things. So I'm kind of the boring one. And Cara's the exciting one.
Wow, well, that's nice to say it.
And I was excited by her excitement. Like, that drew me in. And she's expressed that she was attracted to my calmness and my quietness in some ways, that I was a safe place for her. And so in some ways we've attracted each other by these opposites, and in many other ways we've repelled each other by these opposites. And that's what we're digging into today, is, do opposites really attract, and if so, how? So what about you? What about you in your marriage? What was it that really attracted you early on to your spouse?
And why opposites? Yes, opposites do attract, but that's not always the case, right? I guess my short answer would be like they can, right?
Yes.
And they can lastingly too. But then there's also a point where opposites don't attract too. Like that can be very true too. But why do they attract? Well, because the differences, kind of like Adam was saying, create excitement. Our brain is now like, ooh, something new, right? We're curious. We're excited about something that's different than what we know, something that's different than what we are, right? Our brains love that unfamiliar, and it feels energizing. It feels romantic. I remember when I first saw Adam, well, I don't know, it was probably when I first saw you, but it was like when I first recognized you as who you were.
Yeah.
We were in the auditorium of our college, and I just remember he was walking up the stairs alone. He was alone a lot. And there was something kind of mysterious about that intrigued me, because I was with a lot of people all the time. I had a lot of really close friends. And here was this guy who just was very different than me, and it was intriguing, right? And so sometimes that's part of it, is what attracts you. Sometimes it's because we have emotionally complementing each other, where like one is stable and one is spontaneous. That's kind of how Adam's more stable, I'm more spontaneous. One might be a planner, and then one is more a dreamer. I don't know if you're a planner. I'm definitely a dreamer. I don't know if you're a planner. Maybe you're more into details.
I
didn't
am
know
more
if you'd
into
say that.
details, yeah, I think I have potential to be a good planner. I don't know if I always plan as well as I could,
Yeah, maybe.
but
And I think I don't know. You change, right? You change and you grow. And so Adam, I think he also now is a little bit of a dreamer too.
yeah, absolutely.
That's something that can happen then as well in the relationship, is that sometimes you change and you grow, and that's a beautiful thing. I think that's how God designed it, right? That's part of this whole opposite thing, is that you actually you challenge each other and you inspire each other, and you actually can accomplish more together when you have opposites in there, because you get to learn so much, right? If you're the same person, I mean, I've seen that, right? I've seen couples that are the same kind of person, whether it's like that's how they came in, or maybe that's just how they are now, but they're not moving. They're not, the ones that I've seen that are like that, they're not really doing anything.
There's not a lot of growth happening there,
Right.
because it's the iron sharpens iron Bible passage. I mean, I think that applies there too, where different personalities are going to sharpen each other and draw from each other and build each other up in certain ways that doesn't happen if you're just very similar to each other. And the Bible also says, two are better than one. That also applies here. Two people coming together with all these different unique gifts, talents, viewpoints, perspectives. They can be very powerful in creating a couple that can make a huge impact on the world, and a couple that is always growing and learning more about themselves and each other and the world. It's very powerful. I think the Bible has a few examples of where this is true. I would say Jesus' disciples were very different. If you think about it, like 12 different men from very different backgrounds, some of them very well off, some of them very poor, some of them working in the trades, some of them working in, more like an office job, we would call it nowadays. He brought 12 men from very different experiences, and some of them very opposite. Like, we had a tax collector and we had a zealot who would have been enemies, really, and yet Jesus brought them together as his 12 disciples to do great things. I also think of Ruth and Boaz. They were very different. Ruth came in from a very different cultural background, a different set of experiences. They had different personalities. You can kind of tell that just from the Bible account, where Boaz was very take charge, task oriented, and Ruth was a little bit more relational oriented. She refused to leave her mother-in-law, wanted to follow with her, and think of the good that God did through that relationship. I mean, those were ancestors of Jesus. And so they were a bit of a power couple, and they were very different people. And there's a number of other instances we could look at in the Bible where God uses, people who are very different from each other to accomplish great things together.
And I think too that brings to the point of like do opposites really attract? And I think in a marriage, right, in that kind of relationship where there needs to be like a physical attraction or there needs to be an attraction there. That's different than like me and my in-laws, right? Because your family is very different than me.
Yeah.
And I don't know that we're really attracting each other. It hasn't been that kind of relationship where we're, growing together or anything like that.
Right.
Whereas you and I, we have done that. Granted, it's been really hard and it's not always been pretty.
It almost forces you to do the growth.
Right, but we
you
also
are really in this close relationship.
we also were attracted to each other
Yes,
though.
that's
Like,
true.
and I think maybe initially I was maybe attracted to your family, but then there were some hurts that came in and really because we weren't in this marriage commitment,
Yeah.
this covenant, we weren't one, it
Oh,
didn't
yeah.
evolve into like actually a close relationship. So anyway, I think that's I think the marriage relationship, do opposites really attract? And that it's different than do opposites really attract necessarily in like just real life circumstances, right? It can happen, but a lot of my close friends, they'd be similar to me, right? They would be not that you're, the same person, but I think you kind of gravitate towards people that are similar. Not saying that I think it's always great to learn about new people and be friends with. I am friends with a lot of maybe not like best friends, but I am friends with a lot of people that are massively different than I am.
Yeah.
And that's a good thing.
Yeah.
You're getting different perspectives. You're not just living in this bubble where everybody agrees with you, everybody thinks the same way.
Right.
And you're just in this echo chamber of just hearing the same things all the time, right? It's so good to have those differences. But when you're in a marriage, it's just a different relationship. And so sometimes when you're married, those differences can start to feel exhausting, right? It's like, are we the same about anything? I know we've had that thought, like,
Yeah.
are we, are we meshing in any way?
Yeah.
And I think stress really brings that on, right? Kids, we have 5 kids, work, when work is extra stressful, chores, and just the things that can happen in life that brings in tension. And I think the enemy also really tries to use our differences to pull us apart. What God says is so good and can be so beautiful,
Yeah.
and he wants us to actually grow together. The enemy wants to use to tear us apart. And so I think that comes in too. But it can kind of turn the differences from fun, and now we're like, you're irresponsible, you're rigid, you're insensitive, you're emotional, you're controlling. We see each other instead of like, this is exciting, this is new, this is, to like, I don't like this is why I don't like that, I don't like you, right? We turn the ways to describe our spouse from positive to more like the negative viewpoint of it.
Yeah, almost like a judgment. Like the differences can either be something we celebrate or it could be something that we start to judge. Yeah, and the unspoken fear underneath can cause those differences to be hard to deal with. Maybe, you have a husband who's a bit more laid back, and the wife is afraid because now she has to take on more. She has to carry the burden more because he's not stepping into that. There's a fear underneath that difference. Another one would be like, if she's so sensitive, then I have to walk on eggshells around her. I don't want to trigger her into a bunch of negative emotions, so I'm going to kind of tiptoe around her and make sure that everything's okay because I'm afraid of setting her off. So those fears can sometimes really aggravate these differences and can make them more painful, and can start some of that judgment. And a lot of times differences can also poke at like wounds that we have inside. and unmet needs and insecurities that we have, or things that we've picked up from childhood or whatnot. I know a guy who he needs to be on time all the time. He looks at his life like it has to be ordered, and he grew up in a situation where chaos was a problem. So he didn't want anything to do with chaos. He developed this need to control, need to be on time, need to be very succinct. And yet he married a wife who's not as time oriented. You know, she's a little bit more relational. So like if they're going out and she's running late, she's still getting ready or whatever, and he's like watching the clock, very upset, like, oh no, you know, like we're going to be late. And now he gets angry. Now he's triggered because he doesn't want to be late. He feels the chaos is starting, like he's not in control. And then she's feeling hurt and controlled. Those wounds get triggered when the situation is bringing out their differences.
Yeah, I think when those wounds get poked at, when they start to be uncovered, which is what happens in marriage, we uncover each other's wounds. We do end up triggering each other so much. That's when we shift from being curious, right, and learning about each other to being judgmental, right, and trying to control. And I know I've done that. I absolutely shifted to that. It was like right when I started to feel unsafe in our marriage, I shifted from like, oh, this is fun to be different to like, no, this is not okay. You need to do this. You need to do this. I really was very controlling. You know, we go from like, how do you see this? Tell me more. I want to hear about you. I want to learn about you. I want to learn about your perspective. To now it's like, why can't you just see things my way? That's the shift, and that's where a lot of couples get stuck. And then we have the thought come up too. It's like, well, if we were a good match, then we would agree more. And that thought is so unhelpful, but we've had it. We've had it. We've even taken it to another level where it's like if we were a good match, we wouldn't have this much disconnection. We wouldn't fight this much, right? Those things are not true. When you're different people, this is normal. It is normal to not agree, to have these discussions that can actually challenge and grow you. But sometimes when we're hurt, when we're speaking from that place, it can actually lead to more disconnection. But there's the option to learn how to have those conversations to grow you. You don't have to stay stuck in the painful conflicts. You can have healthy conflicts. So it's really such an opportunity. I often think about this like, I'm actually really glad that Adam's so different because we have this opportunity. I would not be the woman I am today if Adam was the same, that I am, right? Like I would not have learned so many things because he has a totally different perspective. He acts very differently than I am. And yeah, sometimes I can get stuck, especially when I'm stressed, in that, like, can you just do it my way? But when I sit and think about it, I'm like, I am so thankful because I get to learn and understand a different perspective, which helps me to be more loving, more well rounded, be able to help more people because I'm not just seeing things from my own narrow point of view.
Yeah. And same for me. I mean, I've learned so much. I've grown so much just by being married to Kara and experiencing her different perspective. She's challenged me in so many beautiful and amazing ways. It has helped to shape my mind and my perspective in ways that I really appreciate now looking back. I didn't always appreciate it at the time,
Yeah.
but and Cara was talking about how you try to control, and sometimes, for me, it was more resentment that was growing too, is because I was starting to resent the differences and trying to control some of them as well. But it is so powerful when we take the opportunity to learn and grow and see the blessing in our differences. If you don't see the blessings in the differences, then you end up trying to. I mean, Cara mentioned control, but we also can try to start to fix each other. You can start to actually look at your spouse as a project
Or a problem.
or a problem, yep, that you're trying to tinker with or fix. I need to teach them how to do this differently. I need to teach them to be different. That can be quite unhealthy. You can have a very logical husband who then is threatened a bit by his wife's emotions, and he's telling her to just calm down, and he's invalidating her emotions because he is trying to fix her because he's seeing that as a problem instead of recognizing the amazing opportunity to then maybe get in touch with his own emotions a little bit in the relationship. You can have a spontaneous one like Cara also wanting the rigid one or the the less spontaneous one to loosen up and do things that are fun. And why don't you just go along with this crazy idea of mine? We've been there many
Well,
times.
Adam, to be fair, Adam is very open-minded. That's actually how our marriage has worked so well. Part of the reason, because he's very open-minded. So where we are very different, and I want to do a lot of things that he wouldn't want to do. He's very open-minded, and that's so helpful in a marriage in general. But when you're opposite, that's very important to be open-minded.
Yeah, and what can happen if you're not open-minded, if you're trying to do this fixing thing, you can get into this really painful cycle that can start to take over where you're having a misunderstanding about this difference, and then you're getting really defensive because you're not understanding. So now you're trying to put up some walls, you're defending. Then you might even go into like a shutdown where you're really disconnected from each other and the walls are really hard and really high, and then you can start to grow in resentment because that difference has started widening the gap between you, and then you can get into a disconnection that can last long. It can be even a separation and things like that that get really painful and really serious. So differences can either be opportunities for growth, or they can be causes of some of this pain, depending on how you look at it, depending on how you're either being curious about the difference or critical about the difference.
And sometimes that disconnection marriage doesn't necessarily look like a separation. Sometimes it is like we're just going to be roommates, right? We're just going to be like
Yeah.
partners in this. We're just going to kind of do our own thing, live in our own lane, and call it marriage. This happens for a lot of the wives that I coach. And one particular wife who's in my restored membership, we've been talking about this a lot because her and her husband are very different. And they've been really butting heads a lot lately because her husband wants to hold on to a lot of things and he wants to get more things, um, which doesn't really make sense to her why he wants to keep getting more and why he won't get rid of anything. And so she's really frustrated because, she can't even hardly get out of bed in the morning. There's so much clutter in their bedroom. They can't live in their home in a very functional way. And I know for me, like if there's clutter in my house, like it's stressful. It's like a constant chronic stress for me. And I think that is that way for a lot of people. So she was really struggling because she's trying to get him to get rid of the stuff and he's pushing back. So what I actually talked her through is something way deeper. I could have just told her like, well, just stop doing that. Just try to understand his perspective. But really it goes so much deeper. And I want you to also know that there's so much under the surface, because the reason why we even go to judgment in the first place, like, well, he's just a pack rat. Well, right? We make these judgments. And why do we make these judgments? Because we actually are judging ourselves. We are so used to that voice of judgment or accusation that we then let that voice out onto other people. And that's why it's so important to do our own healing work, to really heal these wounds. We may have even, heard these things from church or from our parents or wherever we were brought up. And maybe we learn this kind of right, wrong, everything's right or wrong. And you need to judge yourself. Are you doing good enough? Are you whatevering enough? When you recognize that voice of judgment, that maybe you recognize it first by seeing that you're speaking it to others. It's really important to go in and do some reflection and notice where you're actually bringing that over yourself. And a lot of Christians struggle with this. And it is something that I think it needs to be a major priority, because we can never love others and love ourselves the way God loves us. We cannot agree with that love if we're so busy focusing on doing, being better, doing more, right? And we're judging and accusing ourselves and others. God says he loves us, right? He loves us no matter what. And to bring that voice in to agree with his abundant, perfect love, that is transformational. And it will transform you as a person, and it will transform your marriage. I guarantee it, because that's God. He is love. And bringing him in is going to transform your marriage and your own, your own heart.
And that love that Kara just talked about, one of the ways that expresses itself is curiosity. To choose curiosity over control, over that judgment that Kara was talking about, and looking at these differences as, I wonder why that is. I wonder what's going on under the surface of that difference. Ask your spouse, how do you see it? I want to understand your perspective. Or maybe you want to get into the emotion of it. How do you feel? When we go to that curiosity, we try to understand where the other person is coming from. That can be very powerful in connecting again instead of disconnecting over it is something that we're different about.
And as they share their heart with you, really look for how that could be a gift. I have even literally made a list. There's been times where things have been so low and we're so hurting and disconnected that I literally make a list like this is what I love about him. These differences, like I will thank God for these differences and find reasons to love them. If he's a planner or she's a planner, that brings structure. Or the spontaneous one brings joy, right? Emotional one, they bring connection. A logical person, they're bringing clarity. No matter what the differences are, usually you can find a gift in them. I'm trying to think of one off the top of my head that you can't, that would be not a gift, but really, I think they all are because God created you. If we're talking about just the unique way you are, God created you that way. So it is a beautiful thing.
Yeah, it's awesome to find reasons to be grateful for those differences and to ask God to help you see how can I be grateful for this difference right now. And also, of course, opposites can be destructive in the relationship as well. These differences can cause someone to go into contempt. There's just this deep contempt for each other instead of this connection where there's stonewalling that happens, where somebody completely shuts down and shuts out of the relationship because of these differences. Pride can also be a big issue because you think that you're better than them. You're better than somebody else because of that difference. And you think that the way you look at it or the way that you do something is better. All that does is disconnect. All that does is cause hurt and pain in the relationship. And that can also lead to power struggles where it's just I want my way, you want your way, and then wrestling for control. It's the disconnection that actually destroys things in the marriage. It's not the difference itself. The thing that is different is not the destructive thing. And that is a key point to remember.
And that can be so painful to be in that place where things are becoming destructive. So if you're noticing that there's any of this destructive behavior, it's important to address it right away because it's going to be even harder to try to heal those wounds from the destructive behavior. For like there's already so much that needs healing, right? But then when we heap that on, it can feel very overwhelming. So if you notice it, it's important to address it right away. Take some time and reflect. Identify one difference, one way that your spouse is different that's frustrating. Name it, right? Call it out for what it is. It's okay. You don't need to judge yourself for it. And then ask yourself with curiosity, no judgment, but what's the fear underneath? When I was like really coming from more of a judgmental place, I would call it passivity. He's so passive. He's a passive man. But when I get curious, when I'm healing those things, maybe I say he's more laid back. So what's my fear underneath him being laid back? I mean, you even mentioned this earlier in the podcast, like that I'm going to have to carry the load of everything because he's just going to be chill in the corner watching life go by, right? And so that's my fear. So identify what that fear is and then identify also what's one way that that difference can actually benefit your relationship. So for us it's like if Adam was as intense and passionate and as I am, then we'd probably be butting heads even more. He brings a calmness, he brings that calm presence and that groundedness. And that's really important. And so I can notice, I can shift my thinking, right? I'm in charge of my thoughts and you are as well. So instead of thinking of this difference as a negative thing, you can choose to think of it in a positive way. And that's so powerful. So that's my encouragement today. I know that this can be really painful. If there is already disconnection, like we said, if some of those behaviors are already destructive, and happening over and over again in your marriage, this can feel like impossible. If that's where you're at right now, you don't have to walk through it alone. That's what we're here for. We can help you identify what is going on underneath. Sometimes it really takes an outside perspective to help you to see not only just like what's happening underneath, like on the surface level, like to notice things that you may not notice because you're inside of the pain, but also we really want to help you go deeper and do some of this deep healing with God where you are transformed as a person, and your marriage gets transformed as well as a byproduct. It's so, so powerful. And I honestly think it would be so powerful for every marriage. And
Yeah.
if this is the case where you're struggling, being opposites and bringing in some destructive behavior, this is an absolute must. Reach out. We have links in the show notes for Restored, my membership for wives, where I will coach you each week. You get all kinds of tools and support to move forward, and you don't have to walk through it alone.
Yeah, and my Refined men's membership as well is also an awesome place to do a lot of that same work. Thank you so much for joining us today on the podcast. Please rate it, review it, share this with a friend, share this with somebody else who's maybe struggling in their marriage. We want to get the word out, and we want to help as many people as we can. That's really why we're here. So we hope you enjoyed the episode. Hope it was powerful for you, and we will see you next time.